Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast Extra. I'm here with John Macon Gillespie from the Grove Report, and we're going to talk about a little bit of Ole Miss sports for a little bit. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Uh,
Sitting outside today and got some traffic going down the road, but it's a good day for it. Just kind of sitting outside in the shade and taking it as easy as I can.
yeah, I can imagine. It's a brutal heat, just a heat wave day in Florida. I went out for a walk and came back. It looked like I went swimming. It
Yeah,
was that type of day.
yeah.
So before we get started, I want you to give me a hot take of something you think is going to happen this football season.
You may not classify it as a hot take, but I think national people would. Um, Ole Miss wins 9 games.
Ole Miss wins 9 games.
Yep.
Why do you think that?
I really like the way the offense is coming together, and I think Pete Golding's additions of players and such as that on the defense are going to make this team look better than I think some of the national experts may think. Um, and so I could definitely see 8 or so, but I'm going 9 right now.
Okay, it's going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to football season. As you've seen my episodes, I put up like 5 transfers that could make all SEC. Today I did one talking about position battles and basically Dart versus Sanders, and I let people know who I think is going to win that job for the first time this year. But how do you think this quarterback race is going to end up?
I personally, right now, like Jackson Dart. Um, I think that the comments, and from what I saw, also with my own eyes, but the comments in the spring about his improvements throughout the offseason. He obviously has another year in this offensive system. I think he's poised to make a jump this fall. Um, right now, I like Dart, and I think that can maybe. My thinking is, I think it can maybe make for some awkward television broadcasts. Like, let's say Dart throws a pick, the camera immediately is going to pan to Spencer Sanders on the sideline, right? I mean, that's just kind of the world that we live in. But um, right now, I think Dart has the leg up, and he's the one if I were picking today to take that job.
All right, and just to let you know, if anybody else needs to know, and I'm sure the Grove Report will have something on it shortly, Ole Miss's uniform assignments for newcomers is out, and number 4, everybody knows about Quinshon, but number 4 is also Centurion Perkins. So I think that's going to be a popular number.
Yeah, that's gonna be a popular jersey number as far as NIL and things like that are concerned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's going to be pretty good. Let's change gears just a little bit and talk about the baseball team. And we realize LSU, got what they paid for. They wanted to buy a College World Series title. They did. I mean, so congratulations to them. But Jacob Gonzalez this season was so poor, but that masked how special of a player Jacob Gonzalez was for Ole Miss. I think he's pre-draft picked for like sixth to the Marlins or something like that. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, we've known since he stepped on campus that he had the potential to be very special. Defensively, yes, but at the plate too, he really came along these last 2 seasons. I think he projects really well in a professional career. He's more of a contact hitter. He's going to hit more for average than hitting 30 or so home runs. But that and his defensive prowess, I think, makes him a good fit for a professional franchise. And I think that's kind of how they view him. Whoever's gonna wind up taking him, he will be an early draft pick. Um, but you're right. I mean, the poorness of this season as a team masked what guys like Jacob Gonzalez and Kemp Alderman were able to do, and setting themselves up nicely for a professional future. Um, and so that's something that I think that Ole Miss fans and baseball fans as a whole can't really forget about. That even though Ole Miss had a down year this year, they've still got some talent that's fixing to make their way into the professional folds.
Yeah, I saw that Kemp Alderman kind of lit up the MLB Combine with exit velocity, and it's like Ole Miss fans like not surprised at all, but Major League fans were like who is this guy?
Hmm. Yeah, people who have either covered that team or watched Ole Miss know how strong Kemp Alderman is. And interviewing him down on the field, he is a huge human being. You can tell that looking on TV as well. But he's huge and he's very, very Mississippi in his approach to things. You can definitely tell that. But yeah, he's kind of the guy that um, when he steps up to the plate, the ball could go through the scoreboard. I mean, it's just that kind of power.
Yeah, it's something else. And before we get out of here, I do want to bring up like Knox Kiffin he takes after his dad a little bit, and at from the Manning Pass Academy where he was basically trash talking Jaden Daniels, to telling people that Lincoln Riley is his favorite football coach over his dad. I mean, it's like he's already he's like the Doogie Howser of trolling at this point.
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely taken after Lane in that respect. I got a really big kick. I guess it was a couple Sundays ago when he tweeted that about Lincoln Riley, and Lane obviously replied and said, "This is my own son, and he's going against me as far as choosing Lincoln as his favorite USC coach ever." But um, yeah, I mean, I've never spoken to Knox. I mean, and I don't know of many people who have necessarily, but uh, if social media presence is any indicator, he's definitely taken after Lane in that regard. And he obviously likes to have a good time, likes to enjoy himself. The shot from the Egg Bowl last year of him uh, using the fire extinguisher on the sideline, the players kind of throwing him up and down a little bit. It was, um, it's he's going to eventually establish his own brand, I'm sure, as he gets older. But for now, from an Ole Miss perspective, that's a boost to Lane Kiffin's brand, right? Seeing his son be funny on social media too. That's just another way for people to see Ole Miss and to see Lane Kiffin. So yeah, he's definitely taken after his dad in that regard, and it'll be interesting to see if that continues to develop as he gets older.
So Ole Miss got a commitment from Shemar Darden out of Tupelo. He's a three-star player, and I explained on my show today that basically, if you look at there and there's no stars, it's a minimum of 3 stars if they go to a Power Five school. So that just means he hasn't been looked at this point. Um, you're in that area. What do you know about that kid?
About him personally, not a lot. I can talk about his program. I know the program that he's coming from, obviously in Tupelo here in North Mississippi. It's a good program. I think there's sometimes talk about that program not really being able to get over the hump and win a state championship, because they have tons of resources, really good coaching staff, but sometimes the pieces just don't come together in the playoffs, and for whatever reason, they can't get over that hump. But coming from Tupelo, I can say probably any kid who comes from there is going to, be in pretty good shape physically because they have the resources at one of the biggest schools in the state that a lot of these smaller schools don't, as far as weight room, conditioning, nutrition, that kind of thing. Um, so anytime there's a kid who commits to an SEC school from Tupelo, I kind of look at it as, okay, this is a kid who, despite the program's inability to win a state championship for a while, this is a kid who is talented and is benefiting from those regimens that they have in place over at that program. And I covered high school football in the state for 3 or 4 years, I guess. And Tupelo was always a crown jewel as far as their facilities and stuff are concerned. But then there was always the talk that, hey, they can't get over the hump. But him coming from Tupelo, that's something I would look at, is that he's probably going to be a pretty good athlete, at least, just from that perspective.
Yeah, and Ole Miss has struggled over in Tupelo. Most of those kids go down to Starkville anyway, so it's anytime a player comes west, I'm glad to see it. Now, do you think this commitment has anything to do with Tristan Jernigan, who's committed to Texas A&M?
It that's always kind of the game within the game, a little bit, so to speak, right? I can't speak to that in one way or the other, but that Jernigan name is obviously a familiar one. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. I mean, I know that there are schools and programs who do employ that kind of strategy, going, hey, let's get this kid to maybe grab this other one. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but it's certainly possible.
All right. Thank you very much, John. And thanks everybody for tuning into the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Ole Miss every day. You can catch it wherever you get your podcast or YouTube, or you can catch it over at the Grove Report, where John does fantastic work for those guys as well. But thank you very much, John, and I'll talk to you again next week, bud.
All right. Always a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you.